Most people who have not experienced this think, well, these people must have dementia or Alzheimer's. It's not the case. Our victims are sharp as a tack. We had a woman, 66 years old. She came home. She got a message on her computer from Microsoft, and the message said that she had a virus on her computer, and then that virus had somehow infected her financial accounts. Within a matter of weeks, this victim had lost $800,000.
Oh my gosh.
The scariest part of these scams is that these victims have no recourse. They're left bewildered.
What typically happens?
The seniors that have the courage to report that this has happened are being told that, I'm sorry, there's nothing we could do. And that is the reality.
Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going deep into the world of AI voice cloning scams. And I'm really excited to talk about this. And
yeah, it's a fascinating topic.
I think it's something that's kind of scary, but also like the technology is amazing.
Right. It really is.
Like it can be used for good and for really bad things.
Absolutely.
And kind of seeing just how these scams work and more importantly, like how we can protect ourselves.
Right.
Because I think a lot of people are like, oh, that will never happen to me.
Yeah.
But, you know, you never know.
You really don't.
And these things are getting so sophisticated now that
Right.
it's really hard to tell what's real and what's not.
It is. And that's what makes it so dangerous.
Exactly. So, yeah, let's start with the basics, I guess.
Like
What
there.
exactly AI voice cloning?
Well, basically, it's, you know, when you think about like the old movies and stuff with like robotic voices, this is not that.
Yeah.
This is like really sophisticated technology where they use algorithms
Yeah.
and deep learning algorithms.
Okay.
And they analyze audio samples of a person's voice.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's essentially like a super-powered mimic. It can learn and reproduce all the little nuances or the inflections.
Right.
You know, even like breathing patterns
Yeah.
of a human voice. And it does it with like scary accuracy.
Yeah. And we have some information from 11 Labs and Microsoft Valley about like how this is being used.
Right.
But one of the things I was thinking about is like, how much audio do you need to create one of these?
That's what's really interesting
Yeah.
because it's not a lot.
Right.
It's a very small amount.
Wow.
One of the examples we have is this Florida politician, Jay Schuster,
Okay.
and they used only a 15-second clip of his voice from a TV appearance
Oh, wow.
and almost got his parents to send $30,000.
15 seconds. That's like nothing.
It's not a lot at all.
And so it's really scary to think like how easy it is to get that.
And that's what makes it so accessible to these criminals.
Right. And it's not just like family members, right? Like,
No, not all.
like there's all sorts of scams going on.
All sorts. Yeah, we've got another one here, the fake down payment scam.
Right.
And in this one, a man in Ontario was tricked into sending $8,000 to a friend
Oh, no.
to help with a down payment on a house.
Oh, wow.
And of course, it wasn't a real friend. It was a scammer using a cloned voice.
Yeah. I mean, that's just, it's like playing on people's good nature.
It really is. Yeah, it's exploiting that.
Yeah. Like you want to help.
Exactly.
And you think it's your friend. So you're like, yeah, sure, I can lend you that.
Of course. Of course.
But it's just crazy how believable it is.
It is. And that's the scary part, you know,
Right.
because like you said, how do you protect yourself against something
Yeah.
when you can't even trust what you're hearing?
Exactly.
But we're going to get into that. Don't worry.
Okay, good.
We got some tips and tricks for you.
Yeah. All right. So I guess let's talk about some other specific types of scams now.
Sure.
So we've got the emergency family member, the fake down payment.
Yeah.
What else is out there?
Well, there's this pretty disturbing trend, actually,
Yeah.
using AI voice cloning for these deepfake investment schemes.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about those.
Yeah,
It's where they use like a famous person.
exactly. Yeah, they're using people that you trust
Yeah.
to try and get you to invest in something that's completely bogus.
And they make it look like they're endorsing it or something.
Right, yeah.
Wow.
And we actually have a case here where a woman contacted the OSC because she thought she had invested with Elon Musk.
Right.
Yeah, she watched this deepfake video and it looked so real.
Oh my gosh. So it's like you can't even trust what you're seeing now.
It's getting harder and harder to tell.
Right.
But the good news is there are ways to spot these deepfakes.
Really?
Yeah, things like reverse image search and AI voice detectors.
Oh, okay.
They can help you figure out if what you're seeing or hearing is actually real.
So it's like a constant battle
It is. Yeah.
between the people making the scams and the people trying to stop them.
It's like an arms race almost.
Right. Exactly.
Technology is always evolving, and so
know.
the scams are evolving too.
Well, I guess that makes sense.
It does, yeah.
But one of the things I was thinking about is like,
Yeah.
it's not just about money, right? Like,
No, you're absolutely right.
it's like the emotional impact.
Huge. Yeah.
Like, imagine thinking that you're talking to your son or daughter,
Exactly.
and then you find out it's not.
It's devastating.
It's just awful. And there's this really sad case in one of our sources about Yub Bachara,
Oh, yeah, I read about
a
that.
student who was targeted with these AI-generated nude images.
Oh, that's awful.
And, like, the scammer actually used existing photos of her
What?
and manipulated them with AI to create the explicit content.
That is so messed up.
Yeah, and it's called sextortion.
Right.
And apparently there's this whole trend of these scams now.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And a lot of them are coming from this region in India called Mevat.
Yeah, I read that too.
And it's just heartbreaking.
It is. It's
I'll
terrible.
think about what these victims are going through.
Yeah. And the fact that these images can be spread so easily online just makes it so much worse.
It's just awful.
It is.
So, okay, so we've talked about the bad stuff.
Right.
But, like, what can we actually do to protect ourselves?
That's the important question.
Yeah.
And the good news is there are things you can do.
Good.
So first and foremost, verify, verify, verify.
Okay.
If someone contacts you, especially if they're asking for money
Right.
or sensitive information, don't just take their word for it.
Yeah.
Call them back on a number. Reach out to them in a different way.
Right.
Just make sure it's really them.
Okay.
That's so important.
So it's like trust but verify.
Exactly.
Yeah. And speaking of trust, one of our sources suggests setting up a family safe word.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Right.
Yeah, especially after hearing about those cases with Jay Schuster and that Trapp family.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, if they had had a safe word, they might have avoided being scammed.
Right. Because then you know for sure.
Yeah, it's just that extra layer of security.
Okay. I like that. So what else can we do to stay safe?
Well, another big one is to be cautious about answering calls from numbers you don't recognize.
Okay.
If it's important, then they'll leave a message,
Right.
and you can always call them back.
Yeah. So screen your calls.
Exactly.
Okay. And let's talk about payment methods,
Yes, good point.
because I feel like that's a big red flag.
Huge, yeah.
Like if someone's asking you to pay in a weird way,
Exactly.
be suspicious.
Always be suspicious.
Okay.
So things like wire transfers, cryptocurrency, gift cards,
Yeah.
those are all big red flags because they're really hard to trace.
Right. So if a legitimate organization is asking you to pay that way,
Yeah,
probably not legitimate.
probably not.
Okay. So be a savvy consumer.
Exactly.
Question everything,
Always question.
especially when money's involved.
Especially when money's involved.
Yeah. Okay. And what about our digital footprint?
Good question.
Does that play a role in all of this?
It definitely can.
Okay.
So you want to be mindful of what you're sharing online,
Yeah.
especially personal audio and video,
Right.
because remember, scammers can use that to create voice clones.
Right. It's like they're collecting little pieces of us.
They are. Yeah, it's kind of creepy when you think about it.
It is. It's like they're building this digital puppet of us
Exactly.
that they can then use to manipulate people.
Right.
Okay. So be mindful of what you share.
Be mindful.
And one of our sources, Bitdefender Consumer Insights, says it's also important to stay informed
Yes, absolutely.
about the latest scams and security tips.
Right, because the more you know,
Yeah.
the better equipped you are to protect yourself.
Right. Knowledge is power.
It really is.
So yeah, we've got to stay ahead of these scammers.
We do. It's a constant battle,
It is.
but it's a battle we can win.
All right. I like that positive attitude.
Gotta stay positive.
Exactly. Yeah, it really is a digital minefield out there, but, at least we're talking about it.
Right. Awareness is key.
Exactly. And I think, one of the things that you mentioned earlier was that these scams are getting more sophisticated.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So what does that actually look like?
Well, before it was kind of like just mimicking a voice, right?
Right.
But now they're really getting good at this whole social engineering thing.
Oh, wow.
So they create these really elaborate backstories. They do all this research on you.
Really?
Yeah, and they use that information to manipulate you.
Oh, gosh.
It's pretty scary.
So it's not just about the technology anymore. It's like
All right.
they understand how people work.
Exactly. They're exploiting human psychology.
Wow. Do you have an example of that?
Yeah, there was this case in the UK. A CEO lost over $240,000
Oh, no.
to a scammer who was impersonating his boss.
What?
Yeah, and they used AI voice cloning, but also all these social engineering tactics.
Oh, wow.
Like, they knew all about the company's financial procedures,
Yeah.
and they used that to convince the CEO to make an urgent wire transfer.
So it's like businesses are being targeted too.
Oh, absolutely.
Not just individuals.
Not at all.
I mean, anybody with access to sensitive information or,
Right.
financial accounts could be vulnerable.
Exactly.
So it's really important for businesses to take this seriously.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like, what can they do to protect themselves?
Well, they need to have really strong security measures in place,
Okay.
like multi-level approvals for transactions.
Right.
And they need to educate their employees about these scams.
Yeah, make sure everyone's aware
Exactly.
because it's so easy to fall for it
It really is.
if you don't know what to look for.
Right.
So, okay, so we've talked about the technology,
Yeah.
and now we're talking about the psychology.
Right.
Like, what are some of the ways that these scammers manipulate people?
Well, one of the biggest ones is playing on emotions.
It's like fear and urgency.
Right.
When you're stressed or panicked,
Yeah.
you're not thinking clearly.
Right.
And that's when you're most vulnerable.
So they try to create that sense of panic.
Exactly.
Like, oh my gosh, you need to act now.
right now.
Or something terrible is going to happen.
Yeah. Or your loved one is in danger.
Right. And that's why it's so important to have those verification processes.
Absolutely.
Like the family safe word.
Exactly.
So that you can take a step back and be like,
Right.
okay, wait a minute. Is this really my son?
Exactly.
Or is this a scammer trying to trick me?
Right.
Okay, this is all pretty overwhelming, to be honest.
I know, it's a lot.
It's like, do we need a degree in cybersecurity just to answer the phone now?
I know it feels that way sometimes, but honestly,
Yeah.
you don't need to be a tech expert.
Okay.
It's more about having that healthy skepticism.
Right.
Being aware of the potential for manipulation
Uh-huh.
and taking those precautions that we've been talking about. Okay, so besides verification and being cautious about calls and payment methods,
Yeah.
are there any other tools or technologies that can help us?
Yeah, there are actually.
Okay, good.
So one of the things that I think is really interesting
Yeah.
is this scam fighting chatbot.
A chatbot.
Yeah, it's called Scamio.
Skimeo, okay.
And it was developed by Bitdefender.
Okay.
And it basically uses AI to analyze potential scams.
Oh, wow.
So you can describe a situation to it, like a phone call or an email,
Uh-huh.
and it'll tell you if it thinks it's a scam.
So it's like having a little digital bodyguard
Exactly.
in your pocket.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's amazing. And it's kind of nice to see AI being used for good,
Right.
for one.
And for once, yeah, it's not all bad.
So are there any other technological solutions on the horizon?
Yeah, there's this thing called digital watermarking.
Digital watermarking, what's that?
So basically, it's like embedding these invisible markers
Okay.
in AI-generated content,
Oh,
like
yeah.
audio or video. And those markers can be used to verify its authenticity.
So it's like a digital fingerprint.
Exactly.
They can tell you if something's been manipulated.
Right.
Oh.
And it's still in development,
Okay.
but it has a lot of potential.
Yeah, that sounds really promising.
It does.
So it seems like there is hope.
And there is.
Like we're not completely powerless against this.
No, not at all.
We have tools,
Hmm.
we have technology,
Right.
and we have each other.
And that's the most important thing.
Yeah, because we can learn from each other's experiences
Exactly.
and help each other stay safe.
Absolutely.
Okay, so before we wrap up this part,
Yeah.
I wanted to circle back to something you said earlier about AI voice cloning not being inherently bad.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So, we've been focusing on the negative side of things.
Right.
But there are actually a lot of really positive applications for this technology.
Oh, okay, like what?
Well, for example, it can be used in assistive technologies
Okay.
for people with speech disabilities.
Oh, wow. So imagine being able to communicate in your own voice,
Yeah.
even after losing the ability to speak.
That's incredible.
It's pretty amazing. Right.
Nice.
And it's also being used in the film industry
Okay.
to allow actors to speak other languages.
Wow, so they don't have to dub over it.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And it can also be used to create personalized audiobooks
Oh, wow.
and even to help people connect with deceased loved ones.
Really? By recreating their voices?
Yeah, it's pretty powerful stuff.
That is powerful.
So, it's important to remember
Yeah.
the technology is just a tool.
Right.
It's how we use it that
Right.
determines whether it's good or bad.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
But obviously, the misuse of this technology is a huge problem.
It is a very real danger.
We need to be aware of.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, this has been really insightful.
But I'm glad.
I think in the last part, we should talk about the bigger picture,
Okay. Yeah.
like the ethical implications of all of this.
Absolutely. That's important. And what we can do to make sure that AI is used for good.
Right.
I switched on the mobile data. One message was from an unknown number. When I opened that message from that number. It was from one of my friends, Mr. Venukumar, who I had not contacted for maybe 1 or 2 years. I was going through the message. Meanwhile, the WhatsApp call came from that number. I immediately picked it up. I could clearly distinguish my friend's voice. He was asking, "You are still in Calicut?" "Yeah," I said. "Then where's your daughter right now?" "Is she in Gurgaon?" Then I said, "No, recently she has shifted to Singapore." Then he was asking about some of my colleagues who had worked with us. Most of them are retired. After all these pleasantries, then he came to the subject. He said he's in a fix. He's on his way to Mumbai, presently at Dubai airport, waiting to board the Mumbai flight. He said he needed the money for the treatment of his sister-in-law, who is admitted in a Mumbai hospital and whose surgery is fixed for the day. The money needed to be deposited with the hospital. That's why he was asking help from me. He tried to contact his relatives first, but some of them expressed their inability. They didn't have sufficient fund, and some numbers could not be reached because, it was early in the morning. When I expressed my apprehension about making a payment to an unknown number, he switched to the video call and his image came in front of me, which only the face was visible, but it was very clear and very distinct, and it was no doubt Mr. Venukumar. After I made the transfer of 40,000 to the account given, immediately he was asking for a second payment of 30,000. That is the moment when I got my suspicion aroused. I looked for Mr. Venukumar's number in my contact list. Then I called his number. Then he picked up.
Hi, it's surprising now.
And he sounded a little bit surprised. I'm making a call at that time. Rupees 40,000.
No, I didn't ask anything. It was not me.
When he said that he has not made any call, and when he said that he has not asked any money from me, then I knew that I have fallen victim for a fraud.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into AI voice cloning scams. We've talked about so much already, from the technology to the scams themselves.
Yeah, a lot of ground covered.
But as we wrap up, I want to focus on what our listeners should take away from all of this, as they're navigating this new landscape of AI voice cloning. What are the big things they need to remember?
Well, one thing that really sticks out is just how important it is to stay informed. AI technology is changing so fast, and the scammers are keeping up.
It's like they're always one step ahead.
Right, so we can't just assume we know everything we need to keep learning.
It's like a constant education.
It really is. So,
Yeah.
Follow good cybersecurity news sources, look out for scam alerts, and talk about these things with people.
Yeah, spread the word.
Exactly, because it's not just about protecting ourselves, it's about protecting our families, too.
Right, especially those who might be more vulnerable, like older relatives or people who aren't as comfortable with technology.
Absolutely. And it's interesting. We came across this case with the Thai prime minister.
Oh, yeah. What happened there?
Well, someone tried to scam her using AI voice cloning, pretended to be a foreign leader.
Wow. So even people in power aren't immune?
No, not at all. It just shows how widespread these scams are and how careful we all need to be. But what I thought was really great?
What's that?
Is that she used that experience to teach other people.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, she turned a bad thing into a good thing.
Right. And that's what we should all be doing.
Exactly. Talk to your friends and family, share what you've learned, and help spread the knowledge.
So staying informed is key. I think another important thing is that trust but verify idea.
Oh, yeah. Huge. Especially online.
Like we can't just believe everything we see or hear.
No, we need to be a little bit skeptical, you know? Ask questions, double-check things, and trust your gut.
It's like being a detective.
I like that, a digital detective.
Right, looking for clues and trying to figure out what's real and what's not.
Exactly, and taking control of our own safety.
Okay, so as we finish up, I think it's important to remember that AI isn't all bad,
Right. We've been talking about the dark side.
but there's a good side too.
Absolutely.
Right.
It can be used for so many positive things, like those assistive technologies we talked about.
Right. Helping people communicate.
In movies, to make them accessible to more people.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing what it can do.
It really is. So it's not about rejecting the technology altogether.
It's about using it responsibly.
Exactly. And making sure it's a force for good.
And that's where we all come in. We need to demand transparency from developers and policymakers.
Absolutely. We need to hold them accountable and make sure they're using AI ethically.
Right, because we all deserve to live in a world where AI is helping us, not hurting us.
I completely agree.
So to all our listeners out there, stay informed,
Mm.
stay vigilant, and stay empowered.
And remember, knowledge is power.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into AI voice cloning scams. We hope you learned something and feel more confident about staying safe online.
Thanks for having me.
And until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and stay safe.